Welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. If you're not too careful, you just might learn something.
Hi there. Welcome back to another little episode of MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next, and if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. Now today, this is just going to be a little quick and dirty episode. I'm doing this with my phone. I didn't bother setting all the cameras and mics and all that stuff up. I got a little waylaid, working yesterday. Had to help the kid out. He needed a hand, so that's what we try to be all about when we can. So we took the day and got him sorted. But that kind of put me behind on what I was doing just a little bit, which is not a huge deal. I mean, it'll be there tomorrow, but but what I can show you is what I got done on the AC brackets and some of the other stuff that we were working on for the new motor. Now, you'll recall in my commentary on the last video I did with the where I was making the brackets, I said, the first thing you do is you make it work, and then you worry about making it look good. So as far as the AC brackets go, I got some other stuff here that I'm in the midst of working on, but most importantly, the AC brackets, I've got those all done. And the good thing about having a donor vehicle means that I can have two of everything and show you essentially the before and after side by side. So in order to make our bracket work to where we can get the AC compressor in there and the belt not hit on the water outlet, we had to lower the power steering pump by about 1 inch. And the only kit that's out there that will accommodate a truck with power steering on the 6-cylinder is Vintage Air, and their kit runs north of $600 some odd, which is fine. I mean, it's a good kit and all that, but we're trying to do this on a budget and still do it right. So it became a moral imperative that I try to make the brackets myself. So what we did is we lowered the mounting of the power steering pump by about 1 inch. And if you'll look, the difference in the height of the bolt holes here, you can see, if I line them up correctly here, with where they go to the timing cover, you'll see that this one's down about 1 inch. And if you recall, there was kind of a jagged shark tooth thing here that I said I would fix later, and of course that's what we did. We cut a piece of metal and put in there and welded it and filled it in. We were more concerned about coming up with an idea that would work first, then we'd worry about making it pretty. So basically what I did was I just made a cut right here, okay, and then slid this down about 1 inch. And once I did that, then I was able to mock up the power steering pump and then line this bracket up. And what we did is we pretty much cut 1 inch out about here, and we've got it now to where it was even on the back. And of course we got it sandblasted and cleaned up and painted and looks nice and all that good stuff. And then this is the plate that the compressor bolts to. And actually that's kind of backwards here because it sits like that, with this facing the front of the engine. And we also cut this back and trim these corners off because they didn't need to be there. And this gives a little extra clearance where I had talked about in I think in my pictures I think I put on Facebook, I mentioned that clearance was a little close, and we took care of that, and pretty much that was pretty much it for the AC. And the only real change up is that with the power steering pump, I'll need to use a neck size shorter belt, just so that I have plenty of adjustment room, so that the adjustment will be somewhere in the middle, in the middle of the travel here. And then on the other side of the motor, there's this bracket here, and the alternator bolts to here, and then this goofy looking piece that comes up here was where the old smog pump went. And of course, the smog pump had locked up on this truck, eons ago, and it never got repaired or replaced or anything like that. And so what we did, so rather than have that thing stick up and look all goofy, we trimmed it off and cleaned it up and ground it, and that way we can mount our alternator and not have anything sticking out like a sore thumb, if you will. And we still have to sandblast and paint that yet, but that's okay. Then the other part of that with the smog pump is this big arrangement right here that sits on top of the intake, and your intake's down here, and then your carburetor sits up here, and you've got this big thing coming out, and you got this big pipe that comes down and goes into the exhaust manifold. And this is for your EGR, which of course this thing's been blocked up and corroded up eons ago, and God knows when the last time it worked. And so pretty much what we did is we trimmed all this away and made a plate and drilled and tapped some holes there and blocked that off so we don't have a vacuum leak. And here is where this came from the smog pump, and would inject air into the manifold, and we just put a plug in that and sealed it up. So that looks going to look a whole lot nicer in there, especially since none of that other stuff is going to be hooked back up, which I couldn't really hook it back up if I wanted to anyway, because it's been unhooked for God knows how long. So then moving along, you'll remember I told you I was going to make a turnbuckle arrangement for the adjusting the belt tension on the air conditioner compressor, and there it is. So this bolts to the cylinder head, and then this bolts to the top ear on the compressor, and then you just turn this to either lengthen it or shorten it, thereby either loosening or tightening the belt, and then you run your jam nut down on it, and Bob's your uncle. So that way you're not messing around with pry bars and nonsense and stuff like that. And I bought enough of this stuff to where I'm going to try and do it for the alternator on the other side as well. So that way, the truck's a little easier to maintain. And then the other little bits and bobs, we sandblasted them, cleaned them up, and shot them with some clear, so they'll look good when they go back on the motor. So now where we're at is I've got the last two wheels I have to wet blast and get those painted. I said I was going to do that this weekend, but didn't happen, so I'll have to end up doing that next week, because it's getting a little late in the day today, plus we got a thunderstorm brewing up out there, so I don't want to be standing out there with a giant metal wand with thunder and lightning off in the distance. So anyway, then once I'm done with that, I'm going to start tearing down the donor truck engine and see what the guts of that one look like. And I saw a little bit of milky oil coming out of it. I'm not sure if that was from just condensation from the motor sitting here or what, but I'm going to check, and I'm going to have the head and the block checked anyway, just to be safe. And what I'm going to do too, if I can swing it, I'm going to get them to mill the head for two reasons. One, to get it back nice and flat so my head gasket seals. You know, 6-cylinder head's really long and they tend to warp over time, so we'll have it shaved down a little bit. And in doing that, we'll also have the block surface, we'll have that decked as well. And what that's going to do, like I said, is make sure that we have a good mating surface for our head gasket. And what that's also going to do is that's going to bump up the compression just a tiny bit. So, and speaking of bumping the compression up, making a little tiny bit more power, there's lots of performance options out there for the straight six, and most of them involve putting headers on it and custom intake manifold that accepts a big old honking 4-barrel. And that's pretty much, that's a good idea, and you can make them really wake them up with that. But since she's going to use this as a daily driver, I want drivability and fuel economy. So we're going to leave this 1-barrel on here, and we're just going to soup it up a little bit, give it a little more power. And to do that, one of the things that I did is I honed this out and made it a little bigger so it'll breathe better. And then I'll do some tuning on the carburetor with the jets and the metering rods and things like that. And then we also have our exhaust manifolds from the later model fuel injected 306, and basically they take 3 cylinders each and dump them into a 2-inch pipe, which then the Y pipe goes into a 2.5-inch pipe. So what we did is we're making the whole exhaust system, we're using it from a 460 big block truck with just the regular stock pipes and hangers and muffler and tailpipe, but it's all 2.5, and I think the tailpipe necks down to 2.25, but that's okay. And it'll allow the exhaust system to breathe better but still be quiet. So that way we'll get a little better flow out of the exhaust. We had to go this route because both of the exhaust manifolds, our donor truck and our original exhaust manifolds, were cracked. There's that one on the donor truck, and then here's this one on the original. You can see it's a pretty common thing with these. So, folks will take and put a set of headers on it, and that's fine and dandy, but then you got headers gaskets leaking, and they're noisy, and it's a pain in the butt. So, this was the best idea, because I've read on the forums where I'm supposing somebody did some testing to prove this out, but that those flow just about as good as a set of headers. So I'm happy with that. And the last thing is drivability, because when you go with these two dual exhaust manifolds, you lose the carb heat. You'll notice the exhaust manifold bolts right up to the bottom of the intake, and it's open to the exhaust, and then the little heat riser valve here allows the exhaust to warm the bottom of the intake. And you can look here and see how it's set up like that. And that's kind of important because especially where they live at, because they're up on the ridge or the plateau. So it gets colder out there, and if it's cold and damp, the carburetor could ice up, and that'll basically make the carburetor freeze, and then it's just not going to run right, and it's going to be stalling out, and throttle sticking and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to take and cut a steel plate here. As you can see, I've already drilled it, and then I've marked out where our passages are. And let me get over here where we can look at the back of the intake, or the bottom of the intake, I should say. And this is where the exhaust manifold bolted up, and there's a big passage that goes all the way around the intake right there. So we're going to bolt that plate on there, and we're going to put 2 fittings, all right, and we're going to run the heater hose through it, and that will put warm coolant around the intake, keep it from icing up. So that's where we're at on this. All right. There's one of the wheels I got painted up, or I got the 2 front ones painted up and got the tires mounted on them. That's one other thing. I still have the other 2 left to do, but they're looking good. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and please subscribe. Click the bell icon so you get notified, and feel free to comment. And you can also email me at MacGyversWorkshop@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to get back to you as quick as I can. I do work a day job. This is just a hobby for me, so I'm not a influencer, as they say. So again, have fun, stay safe, don't hog all the toilet paper, and we'll see you next time.